You know, you move on to whatever you move on in your career, and people forget what you actually did there, but they will always remember the kind of person you were. Saudi people are kind, they're honest, they're authentic, they're people who have values. Be kind and be genuine. I see the youth today coming with so much enthusiasm, so much passion, and so much willingness. There is an emphasis on work because a lot of our time is spent at work. It's about who you are as a person. Who's Lema?
It's like a therapy session.
And I worked with the UN Office of Counterterrorism, which was also something that was completely different. This is not good, then nothing good will happen.
Yeah.
But the more I believe good things can happen, the more, and I can drive those good things, the more I can live my authentic self and live, you know, my values and spread kindness. And I don't want to say peace and kindness for all, but you know, it really is.
Amani Alkhiami, welcome to Discussions.
Hi, very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm glad to have you. For those of you who don't know, Amani has worked with global organizations and nonprofits around the world with her mission to serve others. Amani, I want to ask you, before we jump right into the interview questions, can you tell us a little bit about your education, career, and give us a glimpse into who Amani is?
Well, that's a really big question, but first of all, thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to have this discussion. And, you know, starting off, so I'm born and raised in Mecca. I grew up in a small community of Mecca and got to go to King Abdulaziz University and then did my master's in international affairs in Penn State University in the US. And though it sounds like it was, you know, very smooth and very matter-of-fact type of thing, it was actually, you know, even going to King Abdulaziz University wasn't the easiest path that I had to take because I really wanted to have kind of I don't want to say an international career, did want to have that, but that wasn't an option back in the day. And what we wanted to do is at least to have some sort of experience that was different from what I was experiencing at the time. So I told my parents I really wanted to study in Jeddah, which was like 40 minutes away. So and it's not really that far away, but it's close enough. And I picked the only major that didn't exist في القرى at that time, and it was international business. Okay. And for no reason other than it was the only major that wasn't available in Mecca. And the other reason was it had the word international, and I thought maybe I'll get to travel if I had the word international, and that's kind of how I got into it. And subhanAllah, it just opened so many doors afterwards, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity and that, you know, going to King Abdulaziz University. And then, like I said, I went to Penn State, got my, you know, my master's in international affairs, and that kind of kicked off my career in a way. What was the other part of the question?
No, you answered it perfectly.
Yeah.
I want to give us an idea into your career, the different places. By the way, before we do it, just so you guys know, full disclosure, Amani is a good friend of mine. So this is why it's kind of like awkward interviewing a friend. I always say it's easy interviewing strangers, but with friends, it's like, it's kind of awkward because we know
I
each other.
know you.
Yeah, I know. It's like, why are you asking me this?
Absolutely.
But Amani, I really wanted to have Amani on the podcast just because she brings such interesting perspectives. You know, she's worked for these global organizations. She's worked with MISC. She's worked with really just wonderful organizations that aim to like serve and help others. And when I pitched this interview to you originally, we sat and talked for 2 hours, and then last time we saw each other a few days ago, it was going to be like a 2-hour coffee breakfast, but it turned into like 4 or 5 hour conversation.
Just a great conversation.
It felt like therapy. It really did.
It really did.
Yeah, honestly. So I want to ask you, what are some of the different places you worked in your career?
Yeah, so I worked in, you know, I started working at a really young age when I was still in high school. I always wanted to not depend financially on my parents. So I got to do all kind of things from like selling PowerPoint presentations because not a lot of people knew how to use PowerPoint. So kind of when I was 16 or 15 and my grandmother, and I really want to start from the beginning because it was kind of built something in me for a really young age. You know, even the ability to kind of sell things. And it would be everything from curtains that my grandmother made, and I would sell it, to
I love that.
other adults around me, to making like necklaces made out of spaghetti or like pasta or something,
Yeah.
and making it into pieces of art that we can resell. And because of that, I kind of got really interested in the kind of the art of marketing and developing content and developing products that you can sell even at a young age. So I started working when I was in college, did all kind of part-time jobs, from working in administration to research to again, even doing research for other college students who didn't really know how to do their own research, but I got to learn in the process, and got to work with really interesting organizations like Mohiba, got to work with John Hopkins University, got to work with the Research Center for King Abdulaziz University. And as soon as I graduated from university, I went and worked in Mecca in a TVET institution. For those who don't know, TVET is Technical Vocational Training Institute. And it was one of the first ones that opened for Mecca back in 2012, I want to say. It's, oh my God, I'm so old.
You're not. Time is just passing by quickly.
Yes, it's okay. And then after that, did my master's, did a bunch of part-time jobs during my master's as well, from working in the College of Agriculture to being like a college ambassador for my program, to baking cupcakes and selling cupcakes to make extra pocket money. And then I went back to Saudi and moved basically from the US to Riyadh. That was my first time coming to Riyadh, and I worked for PepsiCo at the time, and I did something called internal communication. Quite honestly, don't know why they hired me, because I had no idea what internal communication meant.
No, don't say that.
No, I say it honestly, because it's not always that what you study prepares you for what you do, but it's rather your willingness to try new things and jumping into different things.
As well.
Exactly. And with PepsiCo, I moved on and I worked with the UN through something called the JPO program, a Junior Professional Officer program within the UN. And I worked with the UN Office of Counterterrorism, which was also something that was completely different. And a lot of people were like, wait, Pepsi? Counterterrorism? How does that come in the same breath? Which was really interesting, quite honestly. And I did that for a few years, got to train everything from really senior officials in government to journalists to young people on prevention and countering violent extremism. And I was, after 2 years of working and traveling around, I was like, okay, I want to go back to Saudi. I really miss it. And I got to try different things in the country, and I was like, okay, I want to go and work at MISC. And I got to work and lead their global initiatives and global engagement for a few years until and I'm still in the process of kind of developing my career and finding new things and interesting projects and, really trying what the world has to offer.
Yeah, but
that was a long answer.
No, I liked it. No, but it's beautiful to see. It just shows that we never stop growing in our careers.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you never know where your road take you.
Exactly.
You just be willing to try and be like, let's see where this goes.
Exactly. I agree. Amani, I want to ask you, what did you want to be growing up?
Oh my God, it's so funny to say, what do I want to growing up? I remember always wanting to be in the service of other. And I don't know for a child why. Well, I do know why. But I wanted to really be a psychiatrist for children. Yeah. I saw different relationships and people around me where children were really suffering and they needed support and they needed mental health support. And I really wanted to do that and become that person. But at that time, I just didn't realize how. Yeah. And that's kind of translated to how and who I wanted to become. And, I grew up with my grandparents in Mecca. And I remember their house was always open for people. Whenever I think about my childhood, I always remember a table full of food and strangers coming in and out of their house. And that really taught me a value of the acts of service that you provide and, being in the service of others. Yeah. And I thought that was beautiful. And I try to carry on that message with me. And I think that's shaped really the kind of child I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
during our conversation that we had a conversation in a coffee shop, breakfast. It was a breakfast place,
I think
right?
it was
a
breakfast
restaurant,
place, yeah.
where we were talking about kind of submission-based projects when it comes to awards, when it comes to grants that you might apply for, especially in Saudi. A lot of people have this mentality of, you know, I'm not good enough, they'll never choose me for this grant, I'll never get accepted, or I don't know the right people, I won't get approved. And you said something very interesting that kind of stuck with me. You said you have to give yourself permission to dream. What does that outlook mean to you? Why was it so important to say that?
Oh, that's it's a big question, right? The way I look at it is a lot of times we stand in our own way in getting opportunities, you know, and I'm sure everyone, you know, you, me, and whoever's listening to this is thinking about, you know, why would I apply to this? I'll never get in, whether it was a, you know, university degree or a program or a job. I'm like, why even bother? But the thing that we all don't understand is that we all bring something unique, right? We all are different in our own way, and the way we think, and the value that we bring, and the creativity and the thinking. Wherever you are and whoever you are, you always have something to bring. But the only thing stopping us is ourselves. And I remember I was that kind of person, and in a way I'm still kind of am, because again, this tackles a lot of, you having to deal with a lot of your internal stuff, right? Is to look of, oh, you know, I'll never apply to this top university, they'll never accept me. Why would they take me? I'm not special. And that's really a reflection of how we see ourselves. But the reality is, when everybody is amazing and everybody has like the toppest of grades, they have like extracurricular, they're amazing on paper, they all look the same. And we need that diversity. We need different perspective. We need people who come from all walks of life to be part of a development and process and input. But it all starts with giving yourself the permission to dream and the permission to try, because what else can happen? You know, what is the worst thing that can happen? I get rejected. It's okay.
Exactly.
I learn from the experience, right? And the best thing that could happen is I get it. And you know, and it's so remarkable in my life where these, you know, where these things have happened to me. Where I remember when I was applying for my master's, I applied to multiple universities, and I said, okay, I'll never get in, but خلاص, let me just try. اسمه جربت, you know, and at least I tried. And I remember not just that I got into the university of my choice, but I was also offered a full scholarship.
Sure.
And I stood there and I looked at my scholarship, which I never applied to a scholarship, I just applied to the university. And I looked at it and I said, but why? You're giving this to me? What did I do to deserve this? And it was so remarkable that just simply said that you, who you are, you bring such value to this program that we would love to have you. And I remember saying, oh, wow. You know, God has opened every single door. All He's asking you is to walk through it. So kind of the difference between مخيرين ومسيرين. Are we walking on a path, or we're destined for a path, or we choose the paths that we go on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's all about trying. I mean, there's this mentality that people have. I don't know if you watch like TikTok at all. There's videos on, not really.
Too old for TikTok.
You're not, Amani. There's videos on TikTok that are this mentality of be delusional, just apply for it. You never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Worst case, you meet new people, you learn something new, just apply for it and go out there.
Yeah. Have you ever, like, let me ask you, you know, have you ever been through that, of be like stopping yourself from certain opportunities?
Journalism.
Because you thought,
Journalism. Well, I mean, I never thought, I always wanted to write. You know, I always had a passion for politics and foreign affairs, but I'd see these huge, like, big name journalists, and I'd always aspire to be them, and I always thought, you know, I can never do it. I can never do it, you know. I mean, I didn't study. I don't have that background in journalism, you know. Also, I don't have the right people, to the connections, and this is 5 years ago, what we were talking about. But I just applied. I went for it. I did a few internships and trainings, and it turned into a job. Wow. And I remember that first interview I got, I was just kind of, it was imposter syndrome, kind of thinking, like, this is what I do for a living. I interview people. This is, you know, Sheila, this is amazing.
And you sit with amazing people, you know,
I mean,
every day.
Right now.
Yeah. No, I'm just very humbled by this, but it's so amazing what happens and the opportunities that you get once you just give yourself permission to dream and permission to try.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
applying. I want to ask you, we talked about this a lot, the difference between a leader and a boss. And in my opinion, I think a leader is someone that can take a step back and support others, you know, teach them, educate them so that they can reach that level of leadership to pass on to next generations. You also said that, I feel like I could quote you in a full book, Amani. You've said so many inspiring things. You talked about the importance of stepping back to empower others, to give others an opportunity. Why do you have this approach in life, especially in careers? So many people have the mentality of, no, if I let them go ahead, if I give them the opportunity, then they'll beat me, then they'll get
They'll
ahead
replace
of me.
me.
This like kind of toxic mentality and insecurity, it really is an insecurity. Why do you believe it's important to take a step back?
Well, you know, I came from very humble beginnings, and I believe the reason I was able to get to where I am today, which is something that I'm very proud of, is because somebody opened up the road for me. Is because somebody stepped aside and said, well, this person deserves this opportunity. And I believe it's part of our duty to pay it forward, is to say, and this could be anything, not just, you know, as a boss or as a leader and all of that. It could be, you know, do I really need to apply to that degree? I already have the knowledge.
Yeah.
Let somebody else apply. You know, do I really need to get that award, or do I really need to, you know, do I really need to crowd other people for something I already have? It's almost like, you know, you have dinner and you're super full, but there's also cake, and you're like, oh, let me also eat the cake, but I'm full. Like, no, give the cake to somebody else, right? Give somebody else a slice. And it's a simple analogy, but it also plays in the same way of, once you have something, give space for others to grow. There's enough resources in the world that if it was divided equally and equitably, everybody will have a piece of cake. Yeah. But because we try, or some of us try to hog and kind of monopolize everything, that we end up with some people who have and have nots. Mm-hmm. And the reason I have this mentality is, again, it's that desire to pay it forward and to say, and actually be really an advocate to tell people, no, you've had enough. Let's give this space or spot to somebody else. But it's not just about stepping away and giving opportunities to others. It's also helping uplift others through guidance, through mentorship, through support. It's not just about like, okay, you can sit instead of me here, but it's actually, no, let me help you get to where you want to be, because I know the know-how. I've been where you were one time or at one point in my life. I know exactly what you're talking about. I know what it means to not be allowed to dream. I know what it's like to not give yourself the permission to dream. Therefore, this is what dreaming looks like. And this is what taking space where you deserve looks like. So it's almost my personal philosophy, if you will.
Do y'all see what I mean? We can quote Amani in a full book. I'm not even joking. Oh, mashallah alayki, Amani.
Thank you so much.
You're inspiring. And it also becomes a domino effect. Like for me personally, like I had someone who basically took me forward, guided me, taught me everything I needed to know about diplomatic affairs, foreign affairs. And when I think now, I want to do the same for someone else. New interns that we have in journalism, the next generation, I want to teach them, because I remember 5-6 years ago, someone did that for me and I will never forget it. So subhanAllah, it's like a domino effect.
SubhanAllah, and if I'm allowed to, you know, if I can share a story, actually, because, you know, you reminded me of this. I think one time when I was in college, I kind of was like, okay, I need to take a break. I want to take a semester off. And my parents said, okay, what are you going to do? And I said, okay, it's almost summertime. I want to start a summer school for girls. For girls in Mecca, in the community that I lived in, which had a lot of people who were coming from different backgrounds, different economic status, if you will. And I remember, and it was called this cute name, it was like Start Star or something. Grammar wasn't really my forte when I was younger. But you know, and it was a group, I think it was like 40 or 50 girls. Somebody donated the space to us. It was very small, very, very humble place. And it was me and my friend, and I was like, okay, what can we teach? I was like, okay, I can teach English, I know a little bit of Japanese, I can teach like cake decorating, and my friend is like, okay, I know crafts, I know, you know, creating bracelets and doing like these different things and math and
skills, like teaching skills as well.
Okay, wonderful, let's do this. And it was like there was girls from like 7 to 14 sitting in one class learning all the same thing. And it was like a month type program where it was really nice. It was just a space for girls to come in, get really creative, and just let go. And then, went back to school, never thought about this place again until I was asked a few years later to come back and give a speech in the school that I graduated from. And that school was in the same community. And I remember this one girl walking up to me who now has become in high school. And she's like, oh, Miss Amani, hi. And I'm like, okay, hi, who are you? And she's like, you don't remember me. I'm one of the kids who were part of this program or part of this summer school. And I just wanted to say to you, thank you so much. Because I was able to convince my parents that I want to go to school and I'm applying to this college and I'm getting, I want to become study English and I want to do this and I want to do that. And I remember, I would never forget that story because it really, really shaped a lot of the work that I do, because nothing small you do goes without notice. If it was done in the right intention, inshallah, the more impact you create in the world, as the hadith goes, من كان في يده فسيلة فليغرسها وكان يوم القيامة. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And if you had a plant and it was the day of judgment, still plant it, because you never know what happens. So yeah.
That's beautiful. Amani, I want to ask you, what drives you in life?
Oh, that's a big question. There's multiple things, but the biggest one is my younger brother. So I have 4 brothers, 4 siblings, and he's the youngest. His name is Omar, and he's semi-verbal and autistic. And he is, I can try not to get really emotional,
No.
but he is the reason of why I feel this responsibility to do better for him, to do better in the world, to make the world a kinder and a nicer place. And I'm sorry.
No, you're going to make me cry.
No, but really, he's the kind of person, or he's the person who makes me want to do better. Again, make the world a kinder place, a place full. He's such a joyous person. He reminds me to always bring joy in the world. He's somebody that I absolutely love, and every time I look at him, I'm reminded of my responsibility. God gave me this knowledge and this ability to advocate on his behalf, and not just to advocate on behalf of myself. So he's my biggest, I like to believe he's my biggest fan, but I'm definitely his. So yeah, I absolutely love him. The second thing is the ability to not the ability, but the desire to bring joy in the world. And I think it's really connected to the first point, but I think a lot of people, and I do believe it's a choice, they choose to be in misery, to choose to be upset at the world, to choose to be upset at their circumstances. But what we realize is joy is just so much easier, And I used to have, when I was younger, I used to always have this debate of like, what is happiness? And what does it mean? Very philosophical. But what I realized is like happiness is very momentary, versus joy is something that you can constantly have, and the more you bring it to others, the more you have it for yourself. And the last point, or the last thing that drives me, is the desire and ability to serve others. There's just so much pain in the world that it's just so simple to elevate people's suffering, and it really comes as well from our religious values of, everything is charity. Your smile, removing, trash from the road, helping somebody. And I really am motivated by the idea that, I'll be rewarded both in this life and the afterlife by just being in the service of others. In good ways, of course, but it's just something that hopefully, inshallah, that I've built my career and my relationships on that. So, yeah.
I was actually talking to the last guest about this, about being your authentic self. He works as a consultant psychiatrist, and I want to ask you, in the context of careers, sometimes we find ourselves kind of losing our authenticity, losing our kindness, losing ourself when we want to climb, especially in the corporate world, when you're climbing the ladder. How can people hold on to their authentic selves, their kind and pure selves in this ever-evolving, quickly moving world?
Oh, wow, you said climbing the ladder, and I believe that, first of all, means different things to different people, and I think, the way the world is and the way kind of the world has been set up is that everybody's trying to chase this metaphorical ladder. But to maintain your authentic self is to follow where your values lie. And I was actually just telling this today to somebody who asked me similar thing, like, oh, to stay at this job or leave this job or go this or do that. And it was, you need to see where does your values lie. How can I be, my authentic self through the work that I do? And there is an emphasis on work because a lot of our time is spent at work. And the reality of it, and somebody actually told me, it was like, just do the job. I had a mentor at one point says, like, just do the job, come 9 to 5, then leave and then do whatever you want. Yeah. Then do and become your authentic self. And I actually and he was coming and telling me this with, the best intentions. And I actually thought about it and I was like, no, this is taking half of my day. 50% of my day cannot be a fake self and a mask that I put on just so I can tolerate others and so others can tolerate me. No, I want to be continuously a person who brings my values, who brings good work and good ethics into the world, and I can be genuine because my genuinity is what brings good in the world. I don't know if that's a real word, but we're going to go with it.
We're going to go with it.
But, I want, and I think it's really hard in today's world because I recognize that it's not a choice that everybody affords to be able to pick and choose where they work and what they do. But in the same time, it's really important if you cannot leave where you are, the more you live your values at work, the more you influence others to do the same. And I remember working in this one place where I was told, oh, this is very toxic, everybody doesn't want to help anyone and so on. And I remember we did this I would say silly exercise, but it meant a lot, which was, okay, we're going to celebrate International Kindness Day. And we, employees got into the office and they found a little card that said, here's an act of kindness. And we put a cupcake and with a smiley face and a balloon. And we said, you have to give an act of kindness back. So people can actually cash in that piece of paper. I like that. And even though it was super silly, but it actually made people kind of go to each other. I'm like, okay, can I cash in my card? Can I actually get my acts of service and or kindness? And it was everything. I'm like, I need this paper to be signed, or I needed support, or I needed an advice. And it was so interesting how everyone wanted the place to be a better environment. It's just that when everybody believed that this is not good, then nothing good will happen. Yeah. But the more I believe good things can happen, the more, and I can drive those good things, the more I can live my authentic self and live, my values and spread kindness. And I don't want to say peace and kindness for all, but it really is. It really is.
I like the world peace approach.
Yeah. At least inner peace first, then world peace.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
No, but I completely agree. Even working in different offices, in corporate offices, I think you should create the atmosphere that you want to work in. Like you said, not always do you have full control of where you work in, but little changes you can make here and there. Greeting everyone in the morning, it becomes like a routine. Everyone's used to saying hi to everyone. Yeah. What we do is I celebrate birthdays. I refuse to do digital. I have this old piece of paper that's 4 years old in the office. It's coffee spilled on it, inks on it, and we have everyone's birthdays labeled. But I think this builds a certain connection, and then it's, even when I go on vacation, even when I leave my job, they still continue it.
Absolutely. And to that point, by the way, it's so important because, you move on to whatever you move on in your career and people forget what you actually did there, but they will always remember the kind of person you were. They will always remember the values you brought to this space. And that is what you want people to remember you by, right? So, and it goes in everything. Again, everything we do. I remember working in, international settings where, even in school when I was doing my master's, where I was the person who was, I was doing international affairs. So it was a school of international affairs and law. And because I stress bake. so instead of studying, I would make this like trays of food.
You
because
stress bake.
I stress bake. And this is also part of our like Saudi culture, right? Is like we just feed people. So I would always go to school with like trays of like mini pizzas or pie or cupcakes or whatever.
And it's very Amani of you.
it's very, yes, it is very Amani of me. And I remember somebody from like my international friends be like, oh, you're so generous. Like who would feed like hungry lawyers? And I'm like, I didn't really think about it as feeding others. Specifically, what I thought about was like sharing what joy I had. And it really, and I remember until now, like I have some people who are like, okay, when I was back in college, it was like, oh, what are you bringing today? Like, oh, okay.
They're used to it. It's like a routine. But this is our values. This is our tradition.
Exactly.
It's something, it's normal to us, but they might see it
Exactly.
as something that's...
And we might think, even though we are becoming more corporate culture, sometimes we might adapt some behaviors in the office that are actually imported, I would say, from other cultures in the world that is not necessarily who we are. So there's almost an act of resistance to be who our authentic self as Arab, as Saudis, as Muslims, and kind of bring that generosity and that loving spirit to the environment and not let the corporate world take us over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if you get crazy looks, stay true to yourself.
Hey,
Even in
I'm still going to bring my pie.
Exactly. This is why I love Amani. This is why I love Amani.
Right. I love you too.
You make this interview so easy. So we talked about authentic selves and being true to your authentic selves. But let's talk about inclusivity. How do you define inclusivity in the sector that you work in? And what steps can we take as a society to be more inclusive of each other?
I care about inclusivity, like I said, because of my background, because of my brother, because of all the different things that make who I am. And I advocate, I try to be a big advocate for inclusivity of others. And inclusivity can look in a lot of different things, right? So some people look at it of including people with disabilities, but they only look at it at one lens, as like people with physical disability. There's so many disabilities that are hidden. There's people who look at inclusivity of gender inclusivity, but it's also important to have socioeconomic inclusivity. So inclusivity is not just one thing of like, oh, okay, we're just a group of women, let's add one man, we're done, we achieve this. I'm like, no. It's about creating equal and equitable spaces for all. It's about bringing people together. And I like to say, we cannot move forward unless we all move forward together. I cannot create a society where I'm wealthy and I'm good and I'm thriving and good for me, but everybody else, all my community cannot move forward. Then that is, and I really believe that it's selfish of me to not uplift everyone. It's almost a responsibility to bring everybody together. So in the context of where I work, and it looked in different shapes, in certain places it looked like me being really intentional when I chose a participant in a program, for example, to be like, no, I want background diversity. I'll be like, okay, you went to top universities, good for you, but that's not my measure. My measure is the values you're able to bring into this, not the degrees that you got. When in certain other international settings, inclusivity meant that we were really intentional about making sure that there's gender representation, there's nationality representation, there's ethnic diversity as well. So you need to really, inclusivity is not something that just happens. It's something that you have to design for, and you have to really be mindful of, and you also have to constantly advocate for. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It answered it perfectly. No, it's something you have to continuously work towards.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And even if you're not in a position to kind of uplift everyone, it starts with one person.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
Sharing knowledge, sharing tips. This podcast, I hope this promotes
Absolutely.
inclusivity.
No, definitely. And it's just small steps, no?
I agree. Well, I agree. Having worked in multiple organizations where you championed and supported the role of youth, and not only in the kingdom but around the world, what is your perception of youth specifically in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia?
I'm so fascinated by youth in Saudi. Having said that, I'm kind of leaving my youth era. You as defined.
Leaving your youth era.
I have to say it because it's depending on which definition of youth you look at. Some youth, some definitions I'm already way beyond
that's my
it.
definition. Your youth.
But hey, in Arabs define youth until 40, so we're gonna stick with that, right? So, but what you see is it's so remarkable and almost a little bit jealous of younger youth. I do say younger youth because, to distinguish myself.
Still youth.
But younger youth who are they got so much opportunity now. And truly compared to a time where, again, not a lot of people gave themselves permission to dream, I see the youth today coming with so much enthusiasm, so much passion, and so much willingness to do more, to implement, to change, and to really transform and be transformed with what's happening in the country, which is absolutely beautiful, because it truly has been, a lot of this changes has been created for them, and to see them really follow through is so remarkable. But in the same time, it's really important to also recognize that you need to distinguish between being empowered and being entitled.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important I need to be empowered. The moment I feel entitlement, this is where kind of we go to the earlier point, the moment to step back. And it requires a lot of introspect. It requires a lot of self-reflection to know. And this is something that young people, I don't want to say everyone doesn't have it or everyone has it, but more people need to be more cognizant of it, is to say, I want to be empowered. Once I'm empowered and I transition to entitled, then when I need to be like, okay, let me give back to my community first before I take more. And I see the energy that people want to do this. They just need to be guided in the right path. Yeah.
Speaking of youth, can you tell us about your Y20 MISC experience? How was that for you?
Oh, wow, this was quite a bit ago, actually. It was during 2021, I want to say. But before I tell you about Y20, I want to tell you how I got into Y20, and it's very related to permission to dream. So at the time, I was working at the UN, and I was in New York, and I remember watching the Saudi presidency of the G20. And during the presidency, there was the Y20 presidency. And I remember watching it online, and I saw a person who now is a good friend of mine, Amani, who is chair of Y20. And I remember watching, and I'm like, these people who are like so empowered and privileged and elitist, they get all these wonderful spots and they get ahead. And I've actually told this to Uthman directly. I'd be like, I looked at this and I said to myself, that will never be me. And because I just don't have the access and the empowerment that this person had. And I actually remember feeling really bad about myself that day, even though what he was saying had nothing to do with it, and Uthman is one of the people I do recommend you bring on, because he's just a really fascinating person who has worked quite a bit on himself to get to where he is. Mashallah. But in the same time, I just started feeling bad for myself. And a few months later, MISC opened up application for the next Y20. And I remember a friend of mine called me and she was like, Amani, you have to apply. I'm like, I'll never get in. Why would I apply? She said, no, you have to. I'm going to apply. So you apply with me. So we apply together. I'm like, okay, khalas, fine. I will do it. And I think it was like 40 minutes before the deadline. I'm like, okay, let me type something. And I'm like, clickety-clack. I'm like, let me write whatever. I'm like, nobody's going to read it anyways. And I got surprised a few weeks later, somebody was like, okay, you're shortlisted. And then I get an interview, and I pass the first interview, and I have a follow-up interview. And I remember I did the follow-up interview with Uthman, actually. I was I was in Puerto Rico, time difference. It was 4 a.m. Had to go into like the dark, hotel lobby to take this call and be like, sorry, it's super dark here. And did an interview, and he told me, you got it. Congratulations, you're a Y20 delegate. And with my co-delegates, Khalid al-Dabal and Abdullah al-Aidarus at that time, they told me, okay, you're voted to be the head delegate in inclusion and equal opportunities under the Italian presidency. And I just sat there and I was like, I cannot believe this happened. And all that started because my friend Ghada, who I absolutely love, and maybe another person she interviewed because she wrote a book about Saudi foreign policy. Wow. So she's an awesome person, and I know I'm plugging in my friends here.
Oh, it's good.
But truly very blessed and honored to have them. And Ghada really pushed me to get it, and I thought, subhanallah, all I did was just allow myself to try. And moving on to the actual Y20, so it was, of course, it was online because it was during COVID, even though it was during the Italian presidency. It was really remarkable to work with youth from all G20 countries to the simple goal of seeing how we can create policy or advocate for policies on behalf of youth from our countries to ensure that youth are at the table. Right, yeah. with leaders, and then we're able to produce a communique at the end to global leaders to listen to us. But it was really difficult because especially when we talk about inclusivity, here I was coming of creating more policies for people with disability, neurodivergent disabilities and physical disabilities. But somebody else were talking about inclusion in the terms of getting access to water, or getting access to healthcare,
food, education, safety, security.
Of course, yeah. and the differences of what inclusion meant to people was truly remarkable. And forever I would remember it as a really big teaching opportunity. And because the world is the way it is, you have your 360 full circle moments. I end up working at MISC, and I end up being part of selecting and training the people who get to do Y20 for the following years under the Indonesian, the Indian, and the Brazilian presidencies. And we got to meet some of the most remarkable young Saudis, mashallah, who across different fields have been very strong advocates, very strong policy. Some of them actually are policymakers now, but policy designers who really put front and center what the Saudi youth want. And it's been, I like to think about it as a personal legacy that I carry with me, but also are able to pass on to, the generation after us. Not necessarily a long generation, but the cohort after us.
And it all starts with permission to dream, allowing yourself to try.
Yeah.
And getting out of the mentality of, no, I can't, I don't know the right people, I didn't come from the right university or the right background or the right area.
Exactly. Always think that could be me, rather than that would never be me.
What if? Just say what if. What if? I mean, if you and I didn't say what if, we wouldn't be sitting across from each other right now in different sectors of the world.
Absolutely.
So, subhanAllah,
just say inshallah. Inshallah, and it will happen. Exactly. All you have to do, you think about it, but the planning is all God's plan. يعني فنحن مسيرون ومخيرون مرة أخرى. So yeah.
أكيد. We're getting towards the end of the interview. I don't want to I want to ask you, what is one major takeaway that you've learned both from your career, your professional life, but also your personal life?
Takeaways. And I know we've talked about it throughout the interview is be kind. Be kind and be genuine. That is, that is your one true way of staying genuine to yourself and to staying authentic. That's what people will remember about you. What people will take away from their entire interactions with you. And having empathy, being able to connect with others. It's not just about you. You being in this world is not just about you. It's about what you can bring value to. You know the JFK saying of like, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. But it also goes on a country, on community, on family. It goes on so many levels. And the more we step away from what we selfishly want for ourselves and we really think about what are ourselves able to provide, the more we start to see who we are, and the more we actually start to quantify our impact, be able to measure it more articulately, if you will. And the last thing is, have joy. Life is hard as it is. We don't need to make it harder. Laugh, have friends, go out, be connected with your family. Try to make others happy, and make yours, which will make you happy in its way. So just enjoy life and stop stressing. I never knew that I will get to where I am today. I never planned it. I never, the younger version of me would never have expected this. And if I can share this, I think when I was 15 years old, I created this wall where I called it my impossible dreams. And I started like scribbling on the walls with my parents hating. But basically I said everything that I will never do. There's no way that I could do. Bungee jump or like skydive, study abroad, learn multiple languages, make this amount of money, meet X people. And now I can say 13 years later, whatever years later, I can say, 18 years later, I can say, no, actually, I was able to accomplish everything that was on my board. And I never knew that I could at that period of time. But all that I knew is to keep going, to keep trying, and to keep wanting to do good in the world, whatever that good looked like. And that's really where I believe God has really guided my career more than I planned it for myself. So just take it easy. It's fine.
I agree. And if I can just add one thing about being kind, it doesn't cost anything to be kind. Sometimes it's very difficult in situations to be kind, but it takes strength. We never know what people are going through behind closed doors. We never know what your coworker next to you in the cubicle is going through. Choose kindness. Choose patience. Patience, oh my goodness. This is one of the things I learned in my 20s, practicing patience and understanding. And like you said, empathy. Yeah. It's been so funny. Every guest we've had on discussion so far has stressed the importance of empathy.
Yeah, I mean, it is a buzzword, but it's actually really difficult for some people in practice. So. And I'm sure you meet a lot of people, through your interviews and through your work, where you're like, the moment you feel somebody's not empathetic, the more you're like, okay, no.
You sense it, yeah.
You sense it. You're like, okay, I can tell a lot about the kind of person you are if you don't have empathy. And it's with everyone, right? It's with service staff. It's with senior people. You don't change your empathy based on who you're dealing with, but you actually offer it to everyone.
You treat everyone equally.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't be selective with your kindness or empathy.
No, you can't.
And then when you approach people that maybe aren't as empathetic as others, I just say kill them with kindness. They might look at you like you're delusional, but kill them with kindness.
Yeah, offer them a cupcake,
Yeah,
you cannot be mean with a cupcake in
I'm not a good baker though. I might come to you for the baking.
Hey, happy to provide.
There's nowadays youth are kind of pressured. There's so much pressure on them to figure out what they want to do at such an early age, whether it's high school, freshman year of college, or even people that are undecided majors. They have to decide what they want to do at such a young age. I want to ask you, you and I kind of both didn't imagine we'd be in the position we are today. And subhanAllah, alhamdulillah, akid. But what advice do you have for youth that are still trying to navigate, what sector do I choose? What if I choose wrong? What's right for me? What's the next step?
Yeah. First I'd be like, don't stress. Like, dude, just relax. It's fine. It's all gonna be fine. And I know it sounds really simple, but don't learn a specific major because it's the major that's gonna shoot your career and is gonna make you rich and famous, right? Choose the major that will help you learn adaptability, agility, that will help you have transferable skills. So no matter what you do, you're able to learn. Why a lot of leaders in Saudi, but also globally, are engineers, for example. Specifically engineers, and a lot of times, a very specific type of engineer as well. It's because they're taught through their degree process thinking, right? And that's the core skill that they have, in my opinion, at least. So hopefully there's no engineers here. I'd be like,
No,
upset
I don't
me.
think there's any in the room. Sound engineer, maybe.
But it's the same thing. If you study really any major, what can you learn that is, and that's really the point of college, really. It's not about the subject matter specifically that you learn. A lot of us kind of go to school, study whatever it is that we study, and then we graduate, and not a lot of people really retain that much information. And to be fair, I wasn't really a bright student necessarily. I was very average.
I find that hard to believe, Amani, mashallah.
Yeah, believe it. I actually really didn't put in any hard work in my university, because not just university, but even like high school and university, because I'm a person who learns through, I need to understand it. Mm-hmm. It needs to make sense to me for it to stick. If it doesn't make sense, I'm not really good at memorizing. And a lot of what I studied growing up was memorization. And so a lot of my friends had, graduated with honor degrees, whatever it's called. Yeah, this is how much I wouldn't know. But so I was really average. But what I did in school was I focused a lot on part-time jobs. I focused a lot on community service and volunteering and doing community projects. And I even remember one of my professors one time, I actually was denied from one of my classrooms. I got an F in one of my classrooms.
Why?
Because I didn't show up for the test.
Why?
Well, I had a lot of absences in the subject, and maybe not the best message to tell young viewers. but actually, and this professor said, "Oh, let the activities do you good. Mm-hmm. What good are these activities that you did?" And actually, that subject, can't even remember what it was. I redid the course. It was completely fine. Didn't really think about it much in life. Did not impact anything in my career, because nobody ever looked at my transcript or my grades or what courses I took. So that really doesn't matter. But what mattered was what I had learned, whether in the classroom or what I had learned in doing all these activities. I learned teamwork. I learned leading teams. I learned, cooperating with others, project planning. I learned communication skills. Those are the things that helped me through my entire career, mm-hmm. and that are still things that I still use today. Things that I learned, doing what again my professor said, unnecessary volunteer work that turned out to be even more important than what I studied. But what I'm saying is you need to balance between both. You cannot just study and get good grades, but not really learn. You need to learn from the education you get, and you need to learn across the board. Experience everything, try everything, and get out of your own bubble, meet people, develop all these skills, because once you step into the job market, it's not gonna look anything like what you went to school. Yeah. And I see a lot of people who are like graduated from, interns and things like that, who graduated from top universities, or, they're like, I'm honor roll. I'm like, I don't care. Good for you. Your parents must be proud, but I don't care, because that doesn't bring anything into the work that we do, unless you're a doctor or like something that deals with people's lives.
That's different. You need
that's
that.
Probably
you need
different.
That background.
You really need that. But what matters is your ability to learn, and that's what really is important when you get to the work job. So don't stress about what you're studying.
Don't stress about grades too much.
Yeah, maybe it's good, maybe it's not. In Saudi specifically, you have now micro degrees. You can study everything. You can do things on the side. You can try everything. But that's what brings joy to life, is have experiences of all kind. And that's what enriches truly help you put you on the right path.
Amani, I've made a few videos on social media talking about networking and the importance of authentic networking. Mm-hmm. I don't mean, especially in journalism, you need to know how to network. You're only as good as two things. Your writing, your factual information, your accuracy, but also who you know, your deck of cards. A lot of times I get DMs and comments from people that want to pursue journalism that always ask, how do I network? It always feels so calculated. It always feels so awkward or kind of strategic. And I always advise them to approach it like you're approaching friendship. Just be kind, be open, be yourself. And usually people will connect to that. They feel that, they sense that. And even with people that are less empathetic, it's almost like killing them with kindness. What do you think of authentic networking?
Well, that's really difficult, and I was actually having this conversation with a friend yesterday about it's not, everybody you see, everybody and their grandmother are on LinkedIn writing about. I'm so proud and honored to
I'm
be.
happy to announce.
I'm happy to announce that I was at this event, or I was invited, or a meeting and shaking hands with.
Are you reading my LinkedIn?
Is that you? But actually, this is just how everybody is speaking.
It's very robotic.
And it's almost like it's not just about you being there. It's about what value you're able to bring and take away from these networking opportunities. And I see, and throughout my careers, when people knew I was something, how people kind of
they approach you differently. They talk to you differently.
Treat you very differently. And there was moments where I've actually seen moments, and it happened to me personally, where people didn't know how I was, and I was treated like what I like to call a fly on the wall. It just didn't exist until they recognized who I was.
Yeah.
And I hated that. And I would never want to be treated that way, but also I would never want to treat somebody in that way. And when networking is, you can see, certain people where everybody kind of flocks to like take a picture or say hello.
With a high-level person, official.
Exactly, high-level person, and almost like give them, almost like they're influencers, and everybody wants to take a picture. And authentic people don't do that. You're not there to get a picture. And there were moments where, like, my idols or people who I really looked up to, and I wanted to say hi, and I never do, not because I'm not taking opportunity, but because I believe if I am meant to meet them, I will meet them in the right type of setting, not by me chasing them around and, begging them for a picture or whatnot. Mm-hmm. So you just have to pick your moments. Pick the right moment, but also pick the right people. Why do you want to meet that person? And again, I'm talking about, high-level people. Yeah. And we'll talk about a little bit on different level of networking. So, so just pick your moments. But then on everyday networking, again, it's like you're meeting new friends. Just be genuine. Be like, hi, my name is Amani. How are you? Tell me about yourself. And I've actually done this introduction to people I really didn't know were famous or important. And it was funny, and just because I did that.
The reactions are always interesting, by the way. It's either one or the other. And it's
I mean, honestly, very few people, and people who are actually non-authentic, I'll be like, don't you know who I am?
I've gotten, aren't you a journalist? You don't know who I am? I'm like, I honestly, that's why I asked.
I'm like,
do you know who I am? No.
Do I need to know who you are?
No, we don't know each other.
But it was interesting because people who are really genuine would never tell you you don't know who I am. But actually it would be like, hey, let me tell you about who I am, what I do. And when in an international setting, I also really get excited about telling people, I'm Saudi, and let me tell you about how wonderful my country is. And I get super excited, and then people will be like, I never knew Saudis like that, or I never knew that Saudi were so articulate or were so smart and all of that. I'm like, because I'm the first one you've met, and now it's time for you to meet the second one. Exactly. So it's really just being genuine and trying to have conversation to enrich yourself and others, not just because like, oh, you know what, I want to have my 15 seconds of fame with this person or that person. So
it's basically human connection. It's human connection.
Exactly.
Sometimes we get so robotic with these jobs, but it's human connection.
Exactly.
It's simple.
Exactly. And make sure whenever you're connected, you also know enough about yourself. Yeah. Because you're almost like selling, and I don't like the word selling, but you're promoting your image. Mm-hmm. But who are you? If you don't know who you are, what are you telling people about yourself? You're telling people where you work. Is that who you really are? Your job? Or are you telling people your last name, for example? It's not about your last name. It's about who you are as a person. Who's Lema?
It's like a therapy session.
You're right. I know. That wasn't my intention, but like,
no, but
it's about
true.
Amani,
Presenting your authentic self. It's not about just going up, getting a business card. Hi, I'm a journalist. Hi, I work with, whatever nonprofit. It's about, who are you really?
It's about me first, and then whatever other identifier that is associated with my personal brand looks like.
Yeah, being authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just being your authentic self, if you remove all your identifier that was given to you by your environment,
I agree.
your last name, your wealth, your job, all of that, who are you at your core?
Mm-hmm.
That's what people are interested to know about.
Yeah.
I like to think that people are interested to know that person. And then you start to kind of insert all the other things that make you more special. And that is more authentic. Those are the connections that I've created to make it like authentic networking, right?
Okay.
Versus, I work at this and that. Please, like, do you have funding?
Literally, I'm looking for
that
investors.
never works. That never works.
No, I completely agree. And you said something very interesting. You said when you travel, you're so excited to tell people about Saudi, and I feel the same way. It's almost like you're an unofficial ambassador of your country. I always say this to people, even when you're on vacation, even when you're traveling, carry yourself a certain way, speak a certain way, educate people a certain way, because at the end of the day, you're not just you're a representation of your country. And I know people are like, no, I don't want to think about that. I'm an individual person, but we are.
Yeah.
We're unofficial ambassadors, I always say. So for me, I always go around and I'm excited to tell people, especially, BRICS, we covered BRICS, we were in Johannesburg, and telling people I'm from Saudi Arabia, and I was the only one there, يعني من السعودية.
Wow.
And speaking very highly of it, telling people, here's what's happening, telling people, kind of breaking misconceptions about what's happening in our country, and it feels like an honor, and it's beautiful,
Absolutely.
and you feel this sense of pride in your country.
Absolutely. And, there is the perception of like, oh, we're constantly defending. I don't think we need to defend ourselves. But what we need to do is, which we haven't been doing a lot of actually, is telling our stories,
Yes.
not have our stories be told on our behalf.
Yes.
And that's what basically we see in international media and international settings, if people making these assumptions based on really not much actual like factual data or actually meeting Saudis.
It's a lot of hearsay. I mean,
Exactly. And we all travel, or a lot of us go to different places. I mean, you're allowed to be whatever kind of person you want to be wherever you are, but comes a responsibility,
Okay.
right? To carry on your story, to carry on your narrative, and to show the world, not necessarily, the world at large, you're not going on Good Morning America to tell, your story, but just, having these human connections, and it's similar to kind of the networking part,
Yeah.
human connection to tell your original, authentic story, because your voice matters. You're part of a collective. You're
Okay.
part of the community. And like I said, I get so excited. I remember maybe 10, 11 years ago, I went to Japan for the first time, and I was so excited. And I spoke a little bit of Japanese, so I just wanted to talk to people
Say something.
everywhere.
I'm joking.
Nice to meet you. So I met this Japanese lady, kept staring at me and my friends. We were the only person, obviously, in hijab,
Yeah.
sitting on the train. So she's like, "Oh, where are you from? Are you from Dubai?" And I said, we're so close. We're from Saudi Arabia. And she kind of like, Saudi Arabia? And that was like where my perception, people in Japan should know where Saudi Arabia is, but this lady didn't. But then I went recently, a few months ago, to Japan and Korea, and whenever I said Saudi, they knew information about my country. They said, "Oh, you have such a great government, your reforms, Niyam sounds amazing." And I'm like, wow, look at people knowing stories of my country that were positive. And now they were so excited to listen to me. And I remember
It's
meeting.
just positive, but true. I mean,
It's true, exactly.
It's
It's
what's
the
happening.
reality. And I sat down with this lady that I kind of met in passing.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about art, and I'm telling her I'm Saudi, and you should come to Saudi, and because it's so pretty. And I started gushing, and I'm like, there's so much artistic stuff, and the art scene is amazing. The youth
That's
artists
good.
are wonderful. And she said something to me, and that it kind of really resonated. And she said, "It feels like a miracle that we have met, because otherwise I would not have heard a story of what a Saudi woman lives, and story of her country. And I feel like you were sent to me as a miracle." And she said it again. And I was like, wow, a miracle. Never thought about it this way.
Yes.
But it's actually meeting new people, us sitting together, having, thinking about who I was and who I am today are all miracles. and blessings that we just take for granted. So bask in the miracles and start talking about authentically about who you are.
And you spoke to her about being a Saudi woman, but I want to ask you, Amani, how do you define a Saudi woman? What are her characteristics, in your opinion?
Do we have Saudi women
How long
or
do we
Saudi
have?
men? A person who is Saudi is somebody who genuinely cares about their country, somebody who gives back, somebody who creates impact. As development and transformation is accelerated in the country, we have a responsibility to be part of pushing forward. It's not just the responsibility of the government, it's the responsibility of each and every one of us, because we're all citizens and we're all have a responsibility to create that impact and that ripple impact to everyone around. And when we have leftover and we're able to kind of spread it around outside of our country, we are, Saudi people are kind, they're honest, they're authentic, they're people who have values. They're actually very, very stuck to their values, and the only thing they need to do is really just show it to the world, tell the world about who we are. That's what a Saudi person, in my opinion, is somebody who really cares about doing better in the world.
And creating better as well.
Yeah,
I firmly believe
absolutely.
that. We have our last question. I put it behind my back here.
I like how it's like hidden in
It's
the
like
back.
casually
It's like
hidden.
secret questions.
So there's a way we always like to close every episode of discussions. And I want to ask you, someone who's worked with global organizations, worked around the world with nonprofits in the mission to serve others, what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a career in your sector?
We start off, read everything, learn about if you're interested, for example, in humanitarian relief, then read everything that you could about that. If you're interested in politics and foreign affairs, international relations, it's such a huge area with a lot of different things, and a lot of people think international relations, that means I'm a diplomat. Yeah. That's not the only way to serve. You can be a diplomat in serving your government. You could be an international civil servant and add Saudi representation in international organizations. You can be a researcher. You can be an academic. There's so much to do. So find the area that you're actually niche and interested in. I did international affairs for my master's, and I was really interested to look at kind of the communication element of it and bridging cultures through connections, mm-hmm. through conflict resolution. I was really interested in environmental sustainability. So I really just did things that I thought was interesting to me at the time. And that kind of evolved through my career in different things. It evolved in the work that I did. It really kind of paved the way or kind of maneuvered through different things until I found my niche. So read everything that you could. Attend, there's so many events happening in Saudi today. Yeah. Attend, get out of your way, go attend some events, listen to people, connect with people who are similar and like-minded and interesting folks who can guide you and support you. And maybe if I can do a plug-in, I actually run a group called Saudi in International Organizations, or Saudi at IOs on LinkedIn. Everybody's more than welcome to join. This is where we post about jobs in international organizations, but we're providing mentorship and support.
We'll include a link to it as well.
Okay, awesome. And so people can actually get into these areas, and we're happy to provide that guidance to people. So
yeah, and we'll include a link. I mean, the whole mission with discussions is to provide information and help people. So we'll definitely include that link, and I encourage everyone to join that group on LinkedIn. My last and final question, it's kind of a reoccurring theme with discussions. It's a call to action because we want to make any positive impact, social impact around the world, starting right here in our kingdom. What's one simple action anyone can take to make a positive impact, whether it's something as simple as, like we said, smiling at someone else, beautifying our country in any way, or is there something larger that you recommend doing?
Start small, we talked about be kind, do good. I think I would say good looks very different to different people. It could be everything from charity to just doing a good job at your work. إنك تحسن في عملك. That dedication at what you do, that's good. So do good in everything and have a mindset of having that intention to live my life doing good, and how that good translates in everything that you do. From, suppressing your anger because, a colleague wouldn't give you
Patience.
document, having patience, helping somebody who didn't ask for help just because you thought, you had the capacity to give, listening to somebody else complain and, help reassure them. Just have a mindset of doing good and have that intention that you're doing good because you also want to get good in this life and the afterlife, because we're also not just accountable for this life, right? So just do good and be good.
I mean, you have so much information to share, mashallah, and you're so wise. This is why I said I could fill a book, mashallah, with just quotes from
Thank
Amani.
you. It's very kind of you, Allah.
So honestly, thank you for taking the time out of your day to come join my little show. And I don't know, this was a really nice conversation, and I hope that people can take away so much, not just one thing from the conversation that we had, from the tips that you recommended. And that's my mission with discussions, is bringing on people like you, people that live to serve, live to help each other, and slowly but surely maybe we can make some positive impacts here and there across sectors.
Inshallah. Thank you so much for having me, and this is only a good discussion because I had such a good host asking me the right questions.
If the lights weren't bright, you would see how red I was.
No, but it's true. It's simple acts of impact is what ripples, whether we know it or we don't. And I think this is a great platform that you've created. And inshallah, it's going to open so many doors for others who are listening, inshallah. And even if one person be like, you know what, I'm going to do good today.
I'm going to dare to dream. That's it.
Somebody give permission to dream. And
Exactly.
I think that's really, for me, that is, I'm very humbled by it. So thank you very much. And it's very triggering of my imposter syndrome. So thank you as well.
No, oh my God, stop. I have it too, by the way. We don't talk about, I go meet these officials and foreign ministers, and then I go back and sit on the airplane or the car, or even flying back to Saudi after an interview, and I'm like, well, who is this? What just happened,
Yeah. Well, actually, my mom always is really good at humbling me in two ways. So the first one, she always reminded me, Allahumma ja'alni khayran mimma yadhunnu biyadlanun, God make me better than what other thinks of me. And the other is she would always be like, well, your eyebrows are not the same.
ترى ماما دائما تقول ماما always says they're cousins لما
Exactly.
يقربوا بعض بس
And it's very humbling. You could have, I'm just I've just literally interviewed the minister. She's like, no, but your eyebrows are still not the same. But it's humbling.
Your hair was showing a little bit during the interview. فدائما أركز it's a good.
Exactly. So it's good to always have somebody who gives you that check, but also good to have somebody who help push you forward. So alhamdulillah.
Thank you, Amani. This has been discussions. I don't know how to close it, but this has been a great conversation.
It's been absolutely a great discussion.
Thank you for joining the discussion. Amazing. Thank you.
Yes.